Welcome back to Sip&Talk. I'm Sunny.
I'm Joe.
And today's topic is a global news roundup.
What information did you find today?
Pretty complex situations unfolding around the world.
Yeah, it's a lot. Feels like a fire hose sometimes.
Exactly. So we're going to start with a quick look around, some significant international developments. Then we'll really dig into something that honestly feels overwhelmingly complicated, the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict.
And we'll try a little framing to help make sense of it, maybe simplify the core issues a bit.
Okay, sounds good. So let's kick off with that global scan. Highlights from around the world that, caught our attention.
Right.
First up, the economy. Still seeing a lot of focus on tariffs, trade talks.
Yeah, and what comes through clearly here is just how sensitive markets are, politically driven.
Mm-hmm.
There's this real hope that agreements get reached before deadlines hit, just to ease off some of that economic pressure.
Because there's this general worry about a global downturn.
Definitely. But it's interesting, even with that worry, you see some areas holding strong, like Taiwan.
Right, you mentioned TSMC. They seem less worried about their own numbers right now and more about the bigger global picture.
Exactly that. And the insight there is even the really strong players, they see these external things, government policy, geopolitical events, as the main challenges coming up.
Even if their own operations are solid?
Precisely. It just underlines how tangled up economics and politics are everywhere.
Okay, let's shift over to Europe then. We've definitely seen some notable political shakeups there.
Oh, absolutely. The Netherlands is a prime example right now.
What happened there?
So the reports say the Prime Minister, Dick Schoof, he resigned. The coalition government basically fell apart on June 3rd.
Fell apart. Why?
It was the far-right party, Geert Wilders' party. They pulled out because of disagreements over immigration policy.
Wow. And that coalition wasn't very old, was it?
Not at all. Formed in July 2024. So it shows just how fragile it was from the get-go. This could easily force an early election.
And this isn't just happening in the Netherlands, right? We're seeing other signs too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at Poland, the recent presidential election there.
Mm-hmm.
Conservative historian Karol Nawrocki just won. A narrow victory over Rafał Trzaskowski, who's more pro-EU.
Okay, so what does that potentially mean?
Well, the analysis suggests this might pull Poland closer to the U.S.
Closer to the U.S.
Which in turn could kind of strain things with the European Union. You might see a bit more divergence within the EU itself.
Interesting dynamics. Okay, from Europe, let's pivot east. Asia. South Korea's presidential election.
Right. Lee Jae-myung of the Democratic Party won there.
And what drove that result?
Well, the information points to a couple of key things. One was definitely dissatisfaction with the sitting president, Yoon Suk-yeol.
Especially that brief martial law decision. That seemed critical.
Exactly. That's mentioned as a real turning point. But also support for Lee Jae-myung's actual platform.
What kind of policies?
Things like boosting public investment, more environmental commitments, universal basic income, supporting vulnerable groups, left-leaning policies.
So it was a mixed reaction against the current guy, but also support for the alternative vision.
Precisely. Now, this result,
yeah.
Well, according to the analysis, it immediately throws up some big questions.
Like what?
The main takeaway seems to be that Lee's proposed foreign policy shift, moving towards more independence, maybe stepping back from that strong pro-U.S. alliance.
Yeah.
That could potentially trigger a national crisis for South Korea.
A crisis? That sounds serious. What are the risks they're highlighting?
Well, the analysis points to potentially severe impacts on things South Korea really relies on now. Access to U.S. tech, U.S. markets, those security guarantees from the alliance.
So moving away could really hurt them.
It could. The suggestion is it might jack up defense costs, maybe even isolate the country.
What about China? Could they fill that gap?
Some might think so, but the material suggests China's often more focused on its own tech transfer goals, and its market is, notoriously tricky anyway.
Right.
Plus, abandoning the pro-U.S. stance. That could really damage relations with Japan, too.
So it's a really delicate balancing act. Huge potential consequences for South Korea's place in the world.
It absolutely is, based on the analysis. And, it's worth noting, China's state media reacted pretty positively, very quickly, to Lee's win.
Seeing an opportunity.
Yeah, seeing it as a chance to maybe challenge U.S. influence there. The thinking is the U.S. is, unlikely to just stand by if this kind of major strategic shift happens.
Okay, shifting focus again. Let's look at China itself. There was a pretty striking incident there recently, right around a sensitive anniversary.
Yes, June 4th, Tiananmen Square in Beijing, and apparently rushed towards the flagpole area. Security got him, like immediately, within seconds.
Wow.
But what's really telling is the reaction, or lack of it, inside China. State media, total silence.
Nothing at all.
Zero. And online, platforms like Douyin, Weibo, just rapid total censorship. If you searched for related terms, you just got no results. Vanished.
So the information control internally is just absolutely...
That's the picture painted, yeah.
Yeah.
International media did report it, of course. They stressed how rare something like that is right there and, the likely severe consequences for the person involved.
And what's the interpretation? Why might someone do that?
Well, some analysis suggests it could be seen as maybe an expression of discontent bubbling under the surface, possibly linked to the economic slowdown or just the general political repression.
And the censorship level is really extreme.
Oh, incredibly so.
Yeah.
Examples cited include things like banning live streams of the game World of Tanks around sensitive dates, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, and some analysis even draws parallels to like North Korean monitoring methods, automated filters for sensitive words, forced screenshots that users can't even access.
Yeah.
It paints a picture of deep surveillance, this feeling of, constantly being watched.
A real lack of freedom from fear.
Exactly. The overall view presented is that this situation in China, freedom-wise, is seen by some observers as potentially sliding backwards, maybe even towards the Mao era, where even the freedom to just stay quiet feels like it's shrinking.
And the timing. June 4th, the anniversary of the 1989 Tiananmen crackdown. That adds another heavy layer.
Absolutely. And it's noted that the 36th anniversary was marked internationally. Leaders like Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, they reaffirmed commitments to remembering, stressing human rights, historical memory.
So while it might be erased domestically,
the history persists globally. That's the contrast.
Okay, quite a scan around the globe there. Let's shift gears now to our main deep dive, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It's something that I think for a lot of people just feels incredibly heavy, complex, almost impossible to get your head around sometimes.
It really, really can. It's multi-layered. The history is deep. So to try and get some clarity, maybe focus on the core dynamics we're seeing now. Let's try simplifying it just for a moment.
Right.
Think of it like a really intense, ongoing argument on a playground. A really bad one.
Right. A playground fight. I can picture that. Who are the main kids in this fight?
Okay, so first you've got Ross. That's Russia. In this picture, he's the big kid. Maybe used to getting his way, used to being the boss on this part of the playground.
Okay, Ross, the big kid.
Then there's Youytube. That's Ukraine. Now, Youytube used to hang around with Ross. Maybe was even sort of his follower back in the day. But now, Youytube wants to do their own thing, stand on their own feet, maybe join a different group of friends.
And who's in that other group?
Well, there's Northbro, representing NATO, and U.S. guy, the U.S., so kind of the older kids, maybe seen as the playground bosses in a way, and they become friends with Youytube.
Right.
And recently, Youytube's got another new friend showing up, Jess, for Germany.
Got it. Ross, Youytube, and Youytube's friends Northbro, U.S. guy, and Jess. So what does this playground fight look like right now? Because the feeling is the risk level is just as high in 2025 as it was back when the big fight started in 2022.
Yeah, that feeling seems spot on, judging by recent actions.
Yeah.
Like on June 1st, 2025, Youytube launched this huge drone attack called Spiderweb. We're talking 117 drones.
117. Wow.
And these weren't just buzzing around the border. They targeted Ross's air bases way deep inside his territory, his backyard, even into Siberia, hitting strategic bombers and those important AWACS planes.
Just quickly, AWACS, those are the big radar planes, right? Flying command centers.
Exactly. Really high-value targets. And satellite images apparently confirmed they took losses.
So why did Youytube do that?
Well, Youytube's stated reason is self-defense. And also maybe to boost confidence among their friends, their allies, show they can hit back hard.
Okay.
And Youytube also hit Ross's, let's call it his secret passage, the Crimea Bridge, an underwater explosion that shut it down temporarily.
So Youytube isn't just defending, they're actively disrupting Ross.
That's the picture. They're taking the fight to Ross, trying to hinder his operations.
So Youytube learned some new tricks, new tactics. How did Ross react to getting hit like that deep inside his territory?
Well, Ross, predictably, yelled, "Terrorism." That's the word they used for the drone attacks. They did admit some damage occurred, but also claimed, most of the drones were stopped.
Right.
But the rhetoric got sharp. Some officials, Medvedev, for example, started threatening retaliation. He even brought up nuclear weapons.
The ultimate playground threat, basically. I'll tell my really big brother kind of thing.
Pretty much. But the analysis suggests that's likely more, political posturing than a sign of imminent nuclear use. So in our playground picture, Youyk used new tricks, the drones, hit Ross way back in his yard, broke his special bridge.
And Ross is yelling foul, making huge threats.
Exactly. Maybe partly because the teachers, the international community are watching.
Okay, stepping back a bit then, how did this whole playground fight even begin? What are the roots here?
Yeah, the history is crucial. As presented, Ross and Youyk were super close once, like brothers, thinking back to the shared Soviet past. Oh. But then Youyk started wanting to hang out more with North Bros group, NATO, maybe even join their club. And this made Ross feel really betrayed, maybe threatened.
So that was the initial tension.
That was a big part of it. Then, back in 2014, Ross just went and grabbed Youykk's favorite corner of the playground. He annexed Crimea.
Right, 2014.
And he also started backing some other kids who were already causing trouble on Youykk's side of the playground. The separatists in the Donbas area, Donetsk and Luhansk.
So the conflict didn't just explode in 2022 out of nowhere. There was this whole buildup.
Exactly. And it's important that international bodies like the International Criminal Court, the European Human Rights Court, they basically see Russia as controlling those separatist areas since way back in 2014.
Okay.
Then came February 24th, 2022. Ross launched the full-on invasion, called it a special military operation, claimed it was to protect Russian-speaking kids, and stop North Bros group, NATO, from getting too close.
But how is that seen globally?
Well, the global consensus, based on international law, actions on the ground, it sees Ross as the aggressor, despite his claims of self-defense.
So, in the metaphor, Ross grabbed some turf years ago, then came back with a massive punch saying it was for protection, but Youyk and most others see Ross as starting the really big fight.
That captures the dynamic described, yeah.
So why, after all this time, all the fighting, the cost, why won't they just stop?
Well, according to what we're seeing, the absolute core issue is territory. Ross demands that Youyk must give up the land Ross took Crimea, the Donbas areas.
Still demands that.
Yes. Apparently, that was a major staking point even in recent peace talks mentioned around June 2nd, 2025 in Istanbul. It shows Ross isn't looking for a simple, unconditional ceasefire. He wants concessions.
And Youykk's position?
Absolutely not. Youyk is resolute. President Zelensky's stance is clear. No yielding of land. They're defending their independence, their territorial integrity. Full stop.
So they're just fundamentally stuck on that point, polar opposites.
Completely stuck. And there's history here, too. Remember the Minsk II agreement back in 2015?
Vaguely. That was meant to sort out the Donbas thing.
Right. But neither side really followed through on its terms. So, back to the playground. Ross says, "Give me that turf." Youyk says, "Not 1 inch." They're locked. And the past attempts to make rules for this fight just fell apart because nobody actually followed them.
And now Youykk's friends seem to be getting more involved, which must be raising the stakes on the playground.
They are. That cooperation with Germany, with GER, is a really significant development mentioned.
What's happening there?
There's this $5 billion aid plan specifically focused on helping Youyk produce its own long-range weapons.
And do some themselves.
Yeah. And the information suggests these could be ready really quickly, like in weeks, and apparently need no extra training for Youykk's forces.
Okay.
And there's even this suspicion noted in the material that Germany might be secretly providing advanced missiles, like the Taurus system, maybe disguised somehow as Ukrainian-made.
Okay, that's a pretty big if, but if it happened, what kind of impact could weapons like Taurus have?
Well, the analysis highlights the range.
Right.
We're talking potentially up to 2,500 kilometers.
Yeah.
That puts basically all of Russia within reach.
All of Russia.
Potentially.
Yeah.
To give an example, Kyiv to Moscow is about 760 kilometers. With missiles like that, the flight time could be only like 27 minutes.
Wow. Okay, that really does change the game significantly. So how has Ross reacted to this idea that Youykk's friend Ger might be sending these kinds of super weapons?
Ross's reaction?
Yeah.
Intense.
Yeah.
And very negative. Foreign Minister Lavrov reportedly criticized Germany, said it was acting like it was at war with Russia, even warned of a German collapse.
Strong words.
Very. And Medvedev went even further, calling Germany an enemy, making direct threats of retaliation. So on the playground, Youykk's new friend Ger is potentially giving Youyk some serious firepower.
Making Ross absolutely furious.
And directing threats not just at Youyk anymore, but squarely at Ger too.
This fight, as you said, started heating up in 2014, full invasion 2022. What about the cost? The human cost, the physical damage?
Yeah, the numbers, even the snapshots we have, are just stark. Roots in 2014, full invasion, Feb 2022. By April 2023, over 8 million Ukrainians were displaced inside the country or refugees outside.
8 million.
And as of now, 2025, Russia still occupies roughly 20% of Ukraine's territory. That recent drone attack, 117 drones, just shows the ongoing intensity.
And the human cost in terms of lives lost, injuries.
It's immense. Hundreds of thousands of casualties estimated, millions still displaced. In our playground metaphor, this fight has just wrecked Yuke's home area. Lots of kids homeless, can't go back, living under Ross's control.
And even though Ross took some turf.
The cost for everyone, including Ross, has been absolutely massive in lives, resources, international standing.
So looking ahead then, how does the international community, the teachers, keep fitting into this? And what's the outlook?
Well, the main international response continues to be Western countries, US, UK, EU, sending military aid, economic support to Uke. But there are hints of complexity, maybe inconsistencies. Like, it was mentioned the U.S. Defense Secretary missed a key aid meeting recently, June 3rd. Little things like that raise questions sometimes. Ross, of course, just sees all this Western help as interference and keeps repeating his claim that his actions are purely self-defense.
So the teachers are involved trying to help Uke, but maybe not always perfectly coordinated or with unwavering focus.
That seems like part of the dynamic, yeah. Some are definitely helping Uke, but maybe commitment levels fluctuate or coordination isn't perfect. Ross, meanwhile, keeps trying to rally other kids to his side, but with pretty limited success on the global stage.
And the prospects for actual peace talks, getting them to stop fighting.
Based on the information, pretty dim right now. Both sides seem to be digging in, preparing for this to go on for a long time. Uke's president is adamant about not giving up territory. Russia keeps building up its forces.
So the expectation really is that this fight on the playground, it's likely to continue for the foreseeable future.
That really seems to be the conclusion drawn from everything presented. If we use that playground metaphor one last time to kind of sum up the core dynamic we've discussed. It started with Ross wanting control, taking Uke's turf. Uke fought back, got help from friends, and now it's this grinding, painful stalemate. Both feel they're in the right, neither will back down. They've basically ripped up the school rules, international law, and it's left Uke's playground devastated. The future for everyone involved is just deeply uncertain.
That metaphor, while simple, it really does help clarify that fundamental standoff, doesn't it? Even while we know the reality behind it is just immense real-world tragedy and layers of complexity.
Hopefully it provides a bit of a framework.
Yeah. We've covered a lot today, from those economic pressures, political shifts in Europe, South Korea, the situation in China, and then really trying to unpack the Russia-Ukraine conflict using that framing.
And the goal, as always, was just to help you maybe cut through some of that overwhelming feeling, look at the specifics, the different perspectives presented in the information available.
Definitely helpful.
So, maybe a final thought to leave you with, based on all this.
Please.
In a world where there's just so much happening, so many competing stories, global events feel overwhelming. What does it take for you personally to feel like you understand what's really driving things beyond just the headlines? Maybe think about how breaking down those core dynamics, like we tried with the conflict metaphor, could be a tool for you when you look at other complex global challenges.
That's a great point. A lot to think about there. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive today.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you spending your time with us, exploring these, well, pretty important topics. We'll catch you on the next one.